Next up, I'd like to welcome Annemarie Lesage from Ucentric. She's going to be telling us about how her team kind of really changed the experience of Parc La Fontaine in Montreal.
Actually, it's not really change, it's really changing because the project is ongoing. So, hi, good afternoon. So, I'm Annemarie Lesage. I work with Joël, who you met earlier today. At Ucentric in Montreal, we usually do big, complex projects for financial companies, for big communications group. And then in between projects, we had this one that kind of slipped in, just for a non-profit resident group who lives around Parc La Fontaine in Montreal, and who asked us to help make sure that whatever happens to Parc La Fontaine in the future is not going to look like a pizza. It's not like a process of, let's add another item. And so we said, hey, let's apply some service design to this. And let's first ask ourselves, you know, who goes to Parc La Fontaine? What is Parc La Fontaine's DNA sort of thing, if we look at the experience it provides? So here you are in Montreal. This is what it looks like. So 2 words. Well, what the mayor asked us is to specifically dream the park for the next 100 years. So where do we go from there? And so we thought, well, let's rethink the park, but let's think it in terms of the experience. 2 words about the park. It's a big, big park. See, on the top right there, you see a baseball diamond, like a full natural size. It kind of gives you the idea that the park is almost a kilometer across and a little short of a kilometer north and south as well. It's got a little body of water, which turns into a great skating rink in the winter, and lots of old trees. The park is about 100 years old. And it has tennis and pétanque, and it has a lot of things. And what they asked us is that, well, we don't want an extra stuff. Actually, it's very well visited, lived in. We almost don't want more people in it. How can you renew this? How can you add without adding? So this was part of the thinking. It's called La Fontaine, not because there's a fountain. It's because of the first Prime Minister of Canada when Canada was a province of the UK, who was called La Fontaine. Nevertheless, here we go. So the way we worked was through ethnographic research. This was done quickly. We had no funding for this, and so we did guerrilla research. We took everybody that was, on not billable at the time and said, go. And we visited the park 3 times during the week, on an afternoon, on a morning, and on a Saturday morning as well, to see who was there, and we just grabbed anybody we could. The other thing is that we couldn't take pictures because it was so guerrilla. We didn't pay anybody, we didn't ask them. Well, we asked them the permission, they did sign a release, but nobody wanted them and their children photographed. So you're going to see a lot of trees. And then we went to see another park in Montreal, the Parc du Mont-Royal, because we wanted to make sure that what we heard, what part of it was generic to all parks, and what part of it was specific to Parc La Fontaine. So I'm going to tell you what we observed first, and then once we analyzed it, what insights came out, and briefly where we're going with that. So first thing we observed, and maybe it was because it was sunny, maybe it was just us, I don't know, people smiled. Everybody smiled. It's kind of it was noticeable. And it was multi-generational. There's people from all over the place, all sort of walks of life. The only people we didn't see much of is the Maserati drivers, but anybody below that was there and present and happy to share the park with each other. I mean, a lot of people told us, all ages, they were, young and party goers and saying, this is so cool, we could hang out with people playing pétanque beside us. And people of, and we all agree and we all kind of are happy together. So here we see, the famous pétanque, the sort of younger crowd. We even have a train. and everybody. So it's very inclusive. It's a neighborhood park. This whale used to be and had a water tank in it, and it was part of Le Jardin des Merveilles. It was a kind of a kid's place when I was a kid, and so we, in our questioning, we came across this dad who was playing around the whale with his daughter. And I asked, all my little questions. And he says, well, that whale used to be over there because when I was a kid, da-da-da. I said, me too. He said, why did they change it? They can't do this. And then he went on to explaining that he had grown up there, and so had his mother and his grandmother. He was bringing a fourth generation at the park, and that was how closely knit it was. The park is a crossroad. We have this bicycle highway going right beside it on the edge, and people go out of their way to cycle through the park because it's so nice. You just don't feel like you're in the city for a moment. And it's a hub because people come to stay there and hang out. So that's the train again. So what I meant by different networking is that typically people will network through friends and especially through families. It's a place where parents meet other parents through their kids playing together. And so they meet people that they would never meet in their own circles because of the park. We had the story of this one family. The story was told, so I interviewed the mom, and it's nice, and she has a lot of really nice things to say about it. And we talk, and then I'm about to say goodbye, and the 10-year-old daughter comes in and says, you haven't even told her that all your friends were met and made here. I said, what? And I said, do you mind if I ask her? And so it turns out that the parents were from France, came into Montreal 10 years ago, and all their friends were met hanging out in the park. And so that's how local this park is. And it's a great place to hang out. It's just a great place to do nothing, just to have fun. So our insights, they fall into two categories. One is that it's what is called the third place, so the kind of I'll explain in a minute. And there's a number of highly significant human experiences that could be found, expressed, provided in the park. So the third place, that's a social scientist conception. It's, so you can imagine that all of us go from home to somewhere like work or school, depending. The third place is a place where you go naturally. That's like home, but you don't have chores. That's like work, but you don't work. And it's a familiar place. In the UK, the third place is often a pub. It could be a cafe. It could be the libraries all over the place are trying to reinvent themselves as third places as everything is going digital, so to find meaning into their ways. So the park could be seen as a third place. All these letters are the home, work, school, in French. So there's little triangles all over. People live far, work far, but end up going through the park one way or the other. And as we go and as we look closer, there's like this ring of people that circle the park. And so we got to think that the park should be thought of not so much as the physical boundaries of the park, but a little wider than, and we could allow, I mean, our job for this research was to provide design principle or leeway that they could think of. So how could we stretch the geography of this place? So, and then what do they do in this third place? Well, a lot of them will just hang out. We've seen yoga, we've seen a little bit of meditation, play music in the park. Well, that's common. And people walk their dog. There's a funny story about the center picture there. So this dog was afraid of this sculpture. That's Félix Leclerc. And so the dog owner explained to the dog at length, Felix is a good guy, and you're going to meet him often because we're going to go there every day. And so eventually the dog warmed up to the sculpture. And so that's why he posed, that was us taking the picture of the dog proudly hanging out with Felix. Well, one day the statue is being refreshed, refurbished, whatever, no access to Felix. So the dog comes back to the owner looking like, what do I do now? And she looks around and she says, well, it's okay, you don't have Felix there, but there's Michel Rivard walking his dog there. Michel Rivard is a singer, a local singer. And so the dog just went, oh, great, no problem. And so went and hung up with Michel, the real live Michel Rivard. And so the dog owner. And that happens in the park. Like you go there and you talk to people, and it's not an issue. Which brings us to the other item. So there are a number of significant human experiences that can happen in the park. And I've lined them up this way, from individual experiences to really social experiences. So we've seen glimpses of sort of the kind of transcendent experience a little bit. By the way, all these 5 experiences, depending on different authors, are thought to be the kind of optimal experience one can have in life. So according to different authors, transcendent, sort of spiritual ones being one of them. Well, I'm not sure that our wonderful park is the most transcendent park, but apparently some people do see a connection, which is why I put a little star, somewhat of a little star there. There's a lot of games being played, sports, there's a huge kids playground, but I'm giving it a 1.5 kind of star because I think it's underdeveloped in some ways. And I'm not saying turn it to a Pokemon heaven, but I'm thinking that they could do something smart and subtle with this a little further. Because I'm still thinking, well, how do we bring this further? How do we play with this? Next item is the aesthetics. Well, of course it was designed aesthetically. It is visually lovely. There's a lot of aesthetics. It could be a little more. It could be, but it's like a great pair of slippers, I want to say. I mean, you just love it because you're familiar with it. You know every bit of grass in there, and it's really, it's home. And relational, well, that's the bit about the dog and Michel Rivard and having access to people easily. It's a park where it's especially easy to talk to other people, which is kind of unique, but I'll come to that soon. And biophilic, ever heard of that word? Biophilic is a big fancy word to say the love of nature. It's the kind of, so it was put together by, I want to say, I forgot his name, sorry. So I'm not going to chance this, but anyway, it was a concept that says this is the love of nature. It's the kind of thing that you get from watching an amazing sunset. And according to these people, biophilic experience is like a recharge that all of us human beings get when we're in front of amazing natural beauty. And we don't talk about it, but we crave it, we seek it, it's our sort of animal self that really, really needs that stuff. Well, the park is obviously a very strong immersion in nature, although it's right in the middle of the city. So out of the 5, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more of 2. One is the relational, because the relational is really interesting. It has a lot of opportunity. And the biophilic, because it's really overwhelming. It's really nice. So as we were taking these pictures, and of course these were taken by Dave, who works with us. And so the first picture was taken sort of at an hour before the second. So we were walking in the park and we take pictures, and these 2 guys seem to be talking together. And the way the body language is like we don't know each other, but we're sort of talking. And an hour later, the body language is a lot closer, I'd say. So, but this may be flirtatious or not. It happens all over the park, and it has nothing to do with sort of amorous kind of relationship. There's a rule in the park that says, I'm here, I'm standing here. If you have something you think you have to say to me, you can talk to me. But if I say, I'm not in the mood for talking, you back off. And you do, and people do. And it's like a tacit rule. Whereas when we went to the other park to look at how people behave, this is what we've been told. So when we asked, do you know the other runners? Do you know other people? Say, oh yeah, we know each other. But we never would go and break that bubble because we're there to be in our own personal moment. And that's part of the tacit agreement of visiting that park. So, and it's not because the people are different. It's like they do different things in different places. So the Parc La Fontaine is a social park. And then it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun just walking around the park. And so we met these kids. I say kids, but I mean, they were not kids. They were 19. But nevertheless, so I said, what do you like about this? And this girl takes my elbow and says, look, turn around. Just, what do you see? Green. All you see is green. And where are you? You're in the smack heart of Montreal. This is great. And this is this is the typical biophilic experience. This picture we actually took ourselves. It was not a stock picture. This is somebody walking around feeling good. I don't know who she's talking to, if she's talking to anybody, but it's, it's this expression of this is fun. So of course, these kind of experience could be cumulative, and then we get the winter. It wasn't the same week. There was a season between there. And there are also some frictions. Some people are sort of scared or worried because there's a lot of parties in the park. Some people are actually quite comfortable with it, thinking this is cool, this is peaceful, we are comfortable, but some not. So, and thinking about, so this brought us to two specific kinds of opportunity we could see in there. One is a relational opportunity because the social part of the park is so strong. It's so much part of its DNA. But if we applied, if somebody wanted to apply a service design approach to this and see how we could devise new rules, new ways of engaging with strangers, I'm sure we could possibly find a way to tone down perhaps some of the more threatening parties and also befriend and restructure this place. And that would be a great project. But we're not going there. But next was the more biophilic opportunity. And it felt like because the green was so important, we asked ourselves, how could you possibly be present physically, geographically, and also be present in terms of what you're looking at, and be present in time, and enhance this. Maybe how do you add the digital layer without adding this kind of device and madness? And we thought, well, it has to go through your ears in some ways. And then we thought, well, let's make it magical. Let's make it more flexible. It could be lived alone, or it could be lived socially. So what we came up with is what we call AIR. It's kind of a concept that would be a concert in the park from a live venue. So we would replay through some kind of near-frequency device a concert that happens either at the other end of the park or at the other end of the world. But the concert would have to be mic'd in a way that would be really special. Right now, this is a concept. We're applying to do the design phase of this soon. But the idea would be to, let's say this was an area of the park when we'd have all these sort of des bornes. How do you say that in English? Des bornes. Des bornes. Any? Huh? Edges? Oh, okay. I'm not sure. It's just an emitter. So it would emit some, it's not a speakers, because what you want is a small Wi-Fi signal, a very short frequency Wi-Fi signal, lost in the park. And as you walk through this, it's as if it would be walking through the orchestra that you're listening to. So let's say I'm here and the conductor is here, I'm hearing what the conductor would hear. There, I walk there, first violin. I walk over there, more strings. And I always I back up meters and meters, and I hear the whole thing. And it would be mic'd not one-on-one, so meter per meter, but 1-on-3. So there's a lot of space. So I'll be smack in the middle of trees and listening to whatever amazing music happens in Berlin. Berlin being in the evening, me in the afternoon, it'd be perfect. And if you're not there, you don't get it. It doesn't happen. It doesn't stay on the web. It doesn't stay logged in. You're here, you're there, it's now, it's over. And so this is a project so when we presented our research, we mentioned that, and the nonprofit went, this is great, let's back it up, let's find some funds, let's do the design of this. So it's not done, we're just starting, but that's where we are. And so I wanted to finish just by saying that, tying it back to empathy. The empathy thrust of this project was so big that we ended up doing design. And the difference between, because we talk a lot about empathy, we talk about it to our clients, and everybody nod, and not everybody understands. And so there was a difference between empathy and sympathy. Sympathy is like, oh, I feel for you, you know. Empathy is, I get it. Empathy is when you get it enough that you're on the edge of your seat and you're ready to pop up with ideas. You have idea of what could happen, how could we get involved, how could we engage. Empathy is the beginning of the design process. And in this case, we were not asked to do it, but we kind of fell into it because the empathy trust was so strong. So that was it. So thank you.